you have some questions, but I want to just kind of give you an idea of how you can approach conflict. So let's go to the next thing. There's two different perspectives of conflict. So you have conflict prevention versus conflict resolution. Most of us think of conflict emerging and we want to resolve it as quickly as possible. And that's important. You do want to try to resolve it, but not always are we going to be able to resolve every issue. So what you want to be aware of is how can you engage in conflict in a constructive manner, and that way you can prevent those conflicts from becoming destructive, even though you might not totally resolve it and make sure that that conflict is gone forever, because it is pretty impossible to rid your life of all conflict. So what can you do to help prevent conflict from becoming destructive? Active listening. Be upfront and assertive when needs arise. So that really takes some personal reflection of how can you be aware of what your needs are. Be aware of hooks and triggers. So when we're in a situation, all of us have different hooks or triggers. These are those buttons that people can push that cause us to our emotions to raise to levels. And so by being aware of your own hooks and triggers and being aware of the signs that somebody else might be triggered can help you respond to the situation a little more effectively. Find healthy outlets for your emotions. So instead of when you get your buttons pushed and you get angry and frustrated, instead of domineering or stomping out of the room or yelling back at a person and making them cry or whatever you might do when you're responding to a triggered emotion, try to think of a healthy outlet for that emotion. So maybe taking a deep breath, asking for a break, getting a drink of water, something that tries to calm you down in the moment instead of just continuing to escalate. Have open communication with family and friends. When you're going into a negotiation, be open about it. If you know a family member can help you prepare, call up that family member. If you have a friend that's maybe gone through a similar situation, call up that friend, talk to them about it. The more information you have to help you feel comfortable, the better you're going to be. Understand issues and deal with them incrementally. Try not to just jump in and tackle the overarching issue right at the beginning. It takes small agreements to build trust. So you want to look at how you can get small agreements and you can approach issues incrementally so you can have that trust to really resolve the overarching issue. And then reflect on the approach to conflict grid. So think about, am I entering into this conflict, or am I approaching this conflict in a way that really serves me best? So go back to that conflict grid and think about what is the most appropriate way to approach this conflict. Next slide here. Kind of if you are in a problem-solving mode or you have an issue that arises, there's a typical six-step process here. It's proposed by Michael Bolton, not the Michael Bolton that probably everybody thinks of when I say that, but a different one. And he talks about, one, you need to first define the problem items of needs, not solutions. Brainstorm possible solutions. Select a solution that works. Plan who will do what, how, and by when. That's usually the big thing that gets overlooked when you are trying to resolve conflict, is having a good plan that has measurable criteria to identify how it is coming out. Implement that plan, and then evaluate the results. Let's go to the next slide. And when you look at that plan, you need to really think about accountability. So how can you set people up to really be sure that they're able to follow through with whatever the outcomes of that negotiation are, or whatever the outcomes of that conflict solution might be. So think accountability is not about blame, so you're not looking to set people up for failure, but you want to give people a structure and reliability in a way that they can clearly know what it is that it takes to achieve the outcomes that they want. You want clear expectations and you want to get commitment to meet them. So you want to check in, set those expectations, check in, and make sure that everybody mutually agrees about those expectations. Want to set up open communication. Remember, somebody said that we were talking about this, what we saw here, but follow through and feedback loops are important. And you want to talk about the consequences and any new commitments that might come out of not fulfilling the initial agreements that were made. Last piece that I want to touch here is the clear agreement. So when you are ending a negotiation or you've come up to a solution to a conflict, you want clear agreements that everybody agrees to. So you want that agreement to engage or participate. You want representative agreement. So when not everyone can be in the room, you want to understand who is there that can be agreed to these outcomes. And if somebody isn't there, you want to know how you can make sure that they're going to agree to those outcomes as well. Be intentional. So establish the practice of seeking agreement before moving on. If you get to a situation and you just assume that everyone agrees, that could set you up for failure down the road when you're trying to really hammer out some higher level solutions. So feel comfortable checking in and say, did I get this right? Do we all agree in this area? And then knowing that silence does not equal agreement. That is typically a sign of resistance. If you are getting no response, that silence can be a sign that whatever agreements come out of this situation might not be followed through. And finally, you need to get agreement to support the process and decisions outside of the room. So once again, this kind of goes back to who is capable of ensuring that those agreements will happen. What can you do to make sure that these decisions hold up outside of the room? So those are some very important aspects to think about at the closing of a negotiation. And then the last bit that I just want to kind of talk about here, one, just get your thoughts, feedback, or questions. How do you feel that this quick workshop on conflict impacts your role as a future accountant?
I think it certainly touched on the aspects of what we'll, encounter in the kind of profession and conflict. It's kind of inevitable. You're going to not agree with things. So it's really important to be able to know how to manage conflict when you're going into it. And I think the big thing that I took away was the whole planning before conflict. I feel like a lot of people just kind of go into a negotiation or something and don't really have a plan of action of how they're going to deal with it. And especially if they don't really look at the other person's point of view. So with that, you can see that it's a lot.
Excellent. Well said. Well said. Any other thoughts?
I think that it's important to keep in mind personal someone that you're communicating with it is professional environment. So personal development
Excellent. Thank you for adding that. Other connections to your roles as an accountant, or I know it's 5:53. Do we have time for any questions?
A couple questions.
Okay. And I also just want anybody out there in the webinar world, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in.
Someone's acting collaborative, their partner is acting, and if that collaborative person.
Yes, and that's a very important question. I don't get into that a lot in this short time that we had, but this kind of goes with the way that dynamics work in a room. And you know, if you're going in there and you're aware of what your approach is, and you've thought about it and you think, you know, being collaborative is really what we need to do here, and I'm going to work my hardest at being open to collaboration. But, you know, he's Taylor, he's sitting right here. You know, Taylor's just being competitive here, and I'm really just seeing nothing but fight from him. What you can do, if you are not seeing that your approach is influencing him, you can name that and really bring that out into the room. You can state what your interest is in terms of wanting to have a collaborative approach. You can say, I'm just hearing that this competitive nature coming from you, I don't feel it's going to be constructive. I feel it's going to hurt our ability to work together. So if we can really take an opportunity to sit back and really think about how we can all gain from the situation, that's how you can really have an impact and help people come together around one single approach. Does that kind of address what you were asking? Yeah. Any other questions? No? Well, let's go to the last slide because this is important. If anybody does have further questions or wants to, you know, talk about conflict in your role as accountant further, you can contact me. Here's my information. Email Brian Hansen simply at Creighton.edu, or you can give me a call, and that's where I sit 9 to 5 every single day. Or if you want to just learn more about the work that we do at the Werner Institute, you can check out our website, which is at law.creighton.edu /Werner Institute. And those of you that are here in the room, if you want a brochure, please take a brochure. They're really nice. Our marketing specialist put them together recently. Really like them. But that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Mr. Hansen, I just want to thank you for being willing to come in